If you've been following my channel these past few months, you're most likely familiar with the ins and outs of this challenge. But for those of you who have just stumbled upon this challenge for the first time, you may be wondering, what in the world does that title even mean? What do you mean by material? Well, wonder no longer. I will explain the rules once again. I always start by defining what material means in the context of the challenge. Of course, its regular definition still applies, but as you know, I am willing to bend the meaning of material quite liberally for the sake of the challenge. Within the challenge, a material is just whatever the weapon is made of. This can include your standard materials like wood or various types of metal, but also elements such as fire and magic. How far we have to bend the meaning depends on how many different materials we can find. For example, I treat toxin inflicted from dung pies versus toxic mist as separate materials. The materials would be dung and toxin, respectively. So, now that you know how I define materials, how do I determine the material of the weapon? In 99% of cases, it will be from the name of the weapon or the description. And thankfully, this game has very insightful item descriptions. There will be cases where I have to infer the material on my own, but only when I have an overwhelming amount of evidence pointing to it. So once I determine the material of my weapon, I can only use it to beat one boss. I cannot use the same material for more than one boss. However, continuing to use it against regular enemies is fine. The material must be the part of the weapon that does damage to the boss. So, for example, I may use a shield to block or parry regardless of the material, since that doesn't actually damage the boss. The example I always use for this rule is a wooden catalyst. Whether I use it to cast spells or as a melee weapon is important. If it's the former, the material is magic. But if it's the latter, the material is wood. Hopefully that makes sense. Finally, just for fun, I'm going to be imposing a weapon upgrade limit based on game progression. Basically, I can't upgrade my weapons until I beat the first Lord of Cinder. Once I do that, I can upgrade to +3 or +1 for special weapons. It goes on in this same pattern until I beat the third Lord of Cinder, where the maximum is +9 normal and +3 special, and I can only upgrade my weapons to max level after defeating the Twin Princes. With the rules out of the way, it's time to take Minecraft Alex on a journey through Lothric. Since we chose the Deprived class, our starting weapon is the club, which is of course made of wood. We also have a wooden shield, which we could use for damage if we wanted to, but the most I'll do with it is parry. Except, I'm an idiot, because I forgot this shield doesn't have a parry skill, it has a shield bash, which I had to learn the hard way. Alright, so as always, the tutorial boss goes down on the first try, and we can get a very generous amount of levels. I've been planning this out ahead of time, so I'm getting dexterity to exactly 19, for reasons you'll know soon. Before going to the high wall, we make this guy fall, then we can pick up his gear to take along on our journey. There isn't much that I really need from the high wall, but I do need to free Greirat since he's an important weapon supplier. The only thing left to do here at the moment is, obviously, the Vort fight. And for this, we're going to be taking along the Uchi-Katana, which is made of one of the few materials we can access before crossing the bridge. This is a case where the description doesn't tell us the exact material, but we have enough information to figure it out on our own. So we know that katanas are traditionally made of steel, and the item description alludes to this special steel production process. We can assume that the fine craftsmanship of an eastern land is referring to the steel folding technique. And with that, we know that our next material is steel. While Vort is immune to the bleed from the Uchi-Katana, we don't really need it to have good damage this early in the game. Our Uchi-Katana does just fine without upgrades. And while I had a few hiccups, this was a simple fight overall. After getting everything we need to get to the Undead Settlement, we'll make a quick trip to Firelink Shrine where we'll level up our strength. There actually are a few things we need to get from this area. We'll start with the Fire Clutch Ring, the Pyromancer, and finally the the cestus. With all those goodies, the Uchikatana is going to have to make way for our next material. We're not going to be using anything we picked up here aside from the fire clutch ring, and that's because we already have our next weapon sitting right here in our inventory. And if there's one thing I can proclaim with absolute certainty, it's that firebombs are made of black powder. I don't know what exactly was going through my head when I chose this material against the curse-rotted Greatwood, but it is what it is. What can I say? I like interrupting my usual patterns, even to the detriment of my own well-being. This may sound strange, but this was probably the hardest fight in the playthrough, and I should have known better from the last time I fought this exclusively with projectiles. I said it before, and I'll say it again. I'm with Lemon on this one. This fight is a free aim nightmare. The best I can do is use a bow to position myself, but that only does so much against a moving target. I started out by just using the standard firebombs. I also had some black firebombs as a starting gift, and I didn't want them to go to waste. They did, in fact, go to waste. Not one of them contributed to my victory in this fight. I was getting pretty desperate and also was sick of buying firebombs over and over, so I did what I had to and went to Yol for those free levels. Since firebombs do have decent strength scaling in this game, I decided that I will take any extra damage, no matter how little. Another thing I completely forgot about that ultimately saved the day was rope firebombs. These are items that I rarely use in regular gameplay, but this is the exact kind of situation they were made for. Weirdly, they seem to hit the sacks much more consistently than their standard counterparts, and I used them almost exclusively in the first phase. I did improve my free aiming skills at least a little bit, because I had to get those hard to reach spots if I wanted to maximize my damage. With the help of the rope firebombs, I had enough firebombs to finish phase 2, but I never did figure out the sweet spot for hitting the sacks, so I went for the arm instead. I figured out what to do after some dumb mistakes that consumed all my Estus. I had to carefully bait out a single attack, you know the one, where the tree starts walking. This would be my golden opportunity to damage the hand. As long as I stayed calm and didn't overstay my welcome when it got back up, I could finish the fight without taking any more damage, and without having to use all my firebombs. Beating this is a huge step forward in the playthrough. There are so many materials we can get only from boss weapons, with the Greatwood itself providing our first new material, which is rotten meat, I guess? See that dex requirement? It's 19, the exact number we leveled it to in the beginning. I planned this stuff out. My plans might get foiled, but at least I had a plan, right? Once again, a little more strength is good for now, so let's move on to the Road of Sacrifices. Starting out as the Deprived class has the extra perk of 10 base intelligence to bring Orbeck home. We'll deal with all that magic business later, but for now, our enhanced fists will suffice to get the next boss out of the way. The item description tells us that the Cesti are made of leather. Okay, they have some iron to hold them together, but I think leather is the primary material we're pummeling with here. Perfect for beating up some nerds for their lunch money. Come on, man, I was just joking. Surely someone of your intellectual stature can understand a joke. You know what? I am not playing these games with you today, Crystal Sage. You're a bully. I was the real victim here. No more jokes. Those 10 times you beat me, I just wasn't ready. Now witness the power of my leather gloves. That's right. Get out of here. The boxing ring is no place for a mathlete. Now then, shall I revel in my victory with a tasty snack? A little snack always gets you ready for a nice workout, and there's nowhere that motivates you quite like Farron Keep. If that poison doesn't challenge you enough, don't worry, they've also got 20 abyssal abominations to claw at your throat if you slow down. That'll get those legs moving. I think I've gotten sufficient exercise, so let's settle down for a relaxing scavenger's hunt to get those scrolls for our friend. Just one will do to unlock some new spells, but we might as well get them all. Once we've opened the door to darkness, the Abyss Watchers will be awaiting us for a good, clean fight. But I can't really do that when I'm fighting them with rotten meat on a stick. It's also supposed to have a poison effect, but like everything else in Farron Keep, the Abyss Watchers are immune to poison, so we'll have to rely on its range and weapon art. Being a thrusting weapon, it can also get some juicy counter hits every now and then, so it's not such a bad choice for this fight. I feel like the first attempt went pretty well, but I got caught in one combo and kind of just died. So yeah, once again, no first try for this one. This thing seems to happen a lot where I get progressively worse despite doing so well on my first attempt. I've heard there's supposedly a psychological reason for that. Something about the fight or flight response. Or maybe it's just the physiological mad 'cause bad response. Eventually I was able to get a grip and remind myself to stop pressing buttons during his combos and wait for the jump before taking him to Backstab City. There we go, one Lord of Cinder down. We can finally start upgrading our weapons now, but not before helping myself to a little more vigor. The first thing I do in the cathedral is run to pick up the Saint Bident. While I'm down here, I can also take out the giants. Giants are easy. Giant piles of poo, on the other hand, let's just say their kill count's higher than mine. Guess who doesn't need any of your wares today, Patches? That's right, you can't tempt me with your treasure. Lord Gwyn rebuke thee, Patches. Well, we've gotten everything we need from there, so let's take a look at the new spear we just picked up. This one is made of silver, the description tells us. So we have a new material for the deacons already. We'll just need to level our faith some to wield it. Before we challenge the deacons, we should take advantage of the fact that we've unlocked our first upgrade tier by getting it to +3. As you can see, there are no issues on my end. Let's take advantage of that reach and stab into the mob until, hey, buddy, just keep your distance when poking, okay? At this rate, I'll have to change the video title to Can I Beat a Single Boss in Dark Souls 3 Without Dying, because I don't think I have so far. But it's no big deal because I think we can break the streak with this next one. What has gotten into these guys? Is there like a poo mafia that I pissed off? Okay, we got it. Toxic Mist. That's all we need. To Old Demon King we go. He'll need a moment to wake up, so we can start casting Toxic Mist immediately. It only needs one cast, so that's pretty convenient. And the toxin seems to be working pretty quickly as well. While I'm waiting for that, I guess I'll just camp out here. No particular reason, it just seems like a nice spot. Well, that was fast. This didn't feel very good at all. This felt sad. What has my life come to? Just relentlessly bullying a lonely old man? But in case you're the type that enjoys a little bullying, don't worry, we're not done with it yet. Orbeck is selling Pestilent Mist since we gave him a scroll, and from a previous patch, we know that this isn't just any mist, it's a mist of mercury. It takes 30 intelligence to use, so we'll need to reallocate our stats for that, but once we've done that, we're ready for the next boss. All we have to do is slowly walk up to him until we're close enough to cast the spell, and that's it. He'll never wake up. We can keep casting until his HP runs out. No upgrades are needed for this spell to do its work. The damage also isn't affected by resistances, so Wolnir here will be taking damage that's proportional to his health bar. Unfortunately for Wolnir, skeletons can still get mercury poisoning. 5 doses should be enough to turn his bones into mist. After that fight, I'll make a few spells from the souls I have. Let's make Deep Soul and Black Serpent. We're not quite ready to go into Irithyll. Surprisingly, we actually have some things to get from the Painted World. Of course, this means getting weapons made of unique materials. If we make a mad dash through the woods, we can survive long enough to get the Quakestone Hammer, then run through the Frozen Cave for the Earthseeker. We're gonna start with the Earthseeker since that's the only one I can use at the moment. As usual, a quick glance at the description will tell us the material of this weapon, that being bronze. Not only is it made of bronze, but with it, we have the fighting spirit of a warrior, not necessarily the one on the winning side. As a fearless warrior, it's very tempting to swing without ceasing as we charge into battle, but Pontiff Sulyvahn is not the boss you want to get greedy against. I mean, he's honestly pretty greedy himself, so you've just got to be a good Punisher and get those staggers after he finishes a combo. But a true warrior creates their own openings. A true warrior rolls face first into a fiery explosion. And, of course, a true warrior spams R1 when their health is low. Even getting devoured by the mimic upstairs was not enough to break my spirit, but running out of stamina after a string did highlight my need for stamina when using these heavy weapons. So I went all out and took endurance from 10 to 16. While the axe did most of the heavy lifting in this place, I used Toxic Mist to take care of the mob of jailers on the bottom floor. Why have I never even considered this strategy before? We actually get to use the Earthseeker's weapon art here, and it is really good against NPCs. It was so good that this guy pathetically tried to copy my earth-shaking abilities, only to look like a complete idiot and let me steal his scroll. This time, we're gonna free Siegvord. There's no reason for him to die in this playthrough, and I always hate doing the deed anyway. We also need Carla. I almost called her Yuria after playing Demon Souls so much. I know a rat followed me here, but it shouldn't be able to fit in the— What? How can you fit through there? Hey, get away from her. Don't you dare— Oh no, where's Carla? Where is she, you monster? You ate her! We'll have to cut her out of the rat's belly another day, because Siegvord is waiting for me. For the first time on this channel, he'll be joining me in the fight against Yhorm, because the material I've chosen for this fight is wind. That counts, right? Since he's using the same material as I am, he can stay, and we'll uphold his promise together. Plus, he usually carries the whole fight, so I'm sure he'll be finished long before I even make it to Yhorm. Wait, why are you attacking me now? Is that an item? Oh my god, did Siegvord die? Really, man? You had a promise. I've seriously never had this happen to me before. I'm telling you, as soon as you turn on the camera, some weird things will happen. I can't let that distract me. I've got to finish the job. It's what he would have wanted. Yeah, there he is. It's probably better this way. The true ending of the quest is just too sad. Yhorm gives us a lot of souls to level up, and this time I'm going to focus on strength and dexterity. We also have defeated our second Lord of Cinder, so we've moved on to the next upgrade tier for weapons. After some farming, I got the soldering or soldering iron, depending on where you're from, to use against the next boss. Along with our golden ritual spear, I'm going to upgrade it as far as the rules will allow, then move on to the next area. We've got yet another wedding to go to, then it's time to test our weapon against Aldrich. This might be a stretch, but I think this weapon is made of iron. Since it's used by the jailers to brand us, it's pretty hot, so it does primarily fire damage, which is very effective against Aldrich. Running right in front of him while he shoots his arrows is not the play. But as long as I don't do anything like that, this should be a simple fight. Don't be fooled by his fire in the second phase. He's still weak to fire damage. Keep hitting the Gwendolyn part and you'll be good to go. This was the least painful experience I've had with Aldrich in a while. In my last two runs, I struggled a bit, but this time I was pleasantly surprised with a victory on the second attempt. Now that we've defeated our third Lord of Cinder, we can upgrade our golden ritual spear to +3 since it's a twinkling titanite weapon. Before I fight Dancer, I'd best raise my vigor to whatever I can. As far as spears go, the golden ritual spear is quite short, so I ended up poking the air a lot during this fight. The damage is split almost evenly between physical and magic, and since she's not particularly weak against magic, that translated to some pretty poor damage. Regardless of that, my philosophy is don't get too wrapped up in damage, and just focus on the things your weapon does well. The golden ritual spear is certainly an unconventional choice for the Dancer. It's not something that will stagger her very often, nor is the DPS anything special, but it still works well for quick pokes, assuming you aim it correctly, which was kind of hard to do since this is a fight where you don't lock on too much. And for what it's worth, it looks cool, and for some reason, fighting things with a cool looking weapon adds a certain flair that makes it more interesting. This weapon is also fast enough for some small punishes after a set of well-timed, totally intentional dodge rolls. That's right, I only offer the highest level of gameplay on my channel. Let me just scroll away from that Divine Blessing real quick. As we head into Lothric Castle, we're gonna change our build drastically by switching over to a caster. We'll start with Miracles. Next, we're gonna pick up anything we missed that we need as a caster, like those 2 rings back in Irithyll. Here's what our current stats look like after a visit to Rosaria. We have just enough faith to cast Lightning Stake, one of the 2 lightning miracles available to us. The Canvas Talisman is the best one for us with these stats, so we'll upgrade it as much as our Titanite will allow, which ended up being +7. Since Osiris is a dragon-adjacent creature, we can take advantage of his low lightning resistance and get the most out of our basic lightning spear. I don't usually use Lightning Stake since it seems more situational, but clearly that's a mistake. Here, I managed to hit him with all 3 hits of the spell, which did a shocking amount of damage. I wanted to replicate that damage again, and got enticed by the greed. So I spammed it a few more times because the mercury in the room was really getting to my head. Let's not do that again. I've gotten a bit overconfident with this fight. Just remember that the moment you stop respecting a boss in these games, they might just bring you back down to earth. On the next attempt, I mostly relied on Lightning Spear, and I must say I've forgotten how bad the range of this spell is. Why can't mine have the same range that Gwyn's had in the opening? I can definitely attribute running out of Ashen Estus to missing my shots 75% of the time. I'm not necessarily complaining, but it is quite an adjustment to make after using other types of magic. Anyways, after that, we'll get some more attunement for our next material. We're already prepared for a casting build, so I'll just swap the Faith with Intelligence for the next fight. We can buy Soul Spear to use along with a great variety of spells, then upgrade the strongest staff we can use, which is the Heretic Staff. At +6, it has a decent spell buff that makes Lothric Castle a breeze to clear out with ranged magic like Soul Spear, not to mention the Crown of Dusk adding a little extra boost to our damage as well. And if we get tired of shooting at enemies from afar, Soul Greatsword is a great melee option that hits everything around us in one swing. But Soul Spear is really all we're gonna need for Dragon Slayer armor. It's our most damaging spell, and hits him from practically anywhere in the arena. In contrast to our miracles, it's certainly easy to succumb to greed again when I get dazzled by those numbers, but I can't just sit there and tank through when I have the magic clutch ring on. I suppose that comes with the package when you're a mage though, right? Do a lot of damage, take a lot of damage. While Soul Spear is my main damage source in this fight, it empties my FP bar quickly, so I have a couple variants of Soul Arrow to make use of that extra chunk it leaves behind. Great Soul Arrow is my fastest option, and I had to resort to this to get rid of him after he somehow survived my last Soul Spear. Because I'm still living in fear of the butterflies, I have to hide behind this pillar to make sure they're really gone before I touch the bonfire. After that, we're back to a melee build, and it'll be a little while before we use spells again. Once our stats are where we want them, we can use the levels from the fight to prepare for future weapon stat requirements. When I was in Irithyll Dungeon, I managed to get this tailbone short sword from one of the weird dragon baby things. And as you can see, it's made out of bone, a material we haven't used yet. Despite its name, it is actually a dagger, and a pretty cool one at that. I don't actually know how good it is compared to other daggers, but I like the feel of the moveset. And while the weapon art isn't very useful, it has niche uses, one of which I showcase against this NPC invader. One thing I wanted to take advantage of this time was the dagger's critical damage, so I got myself a nice shield before challenging Champion Gundyr. This time I made sure to pick a shield that can actually parry him. I could tell right away that I made a good decision. and I was even more sure when I started the fight by missing the parry every time. Without a shield, the dagger needed a little help to work on its own, so I had the Pontiff's right eye equipped for times when I couldn't parry. I will never get tired of the butt parry. I think he knew what was going on by the second half of the fight. He started to bait out those parries with combo after combo, and I just barely managed to outlast him after all that tackling and throwing. For me, this was reminiscent of my first ever playthrough of Dark Souls 3. One detail that I never forgot is how I died to Tutorial Gundyr, but somehow beat the champion on the first try. As far as I remember, this is the first time it has happened since. But enough with the life story, let's get back into the action and parry some of these Black Knights. At the edge of the graveyard, we get the Hornet Ring, which would have been nice to have in the fight, but maybe we'll still get some use out of it, so it's worth looting anyway. 30 strength should be enough to use the next weapon I have in mind, and I'll make the Prisoner's Chain on the off chance I need it. I actually stuck with my tailbone for most of the archives. I've grown attached to the little thing, and it honestly isn't even that bad in most cases, but I can't deny that the difficulty is ramping up here, so I'd better put it aside for now and bring out the heavy artillery. I haven't forgotten about that Quakestone hammer I picked up earlier, and now that we finally have the strength to two-hand it, it's time to upgrade it and take it with us for the rest of the level. As usual, I prepare by getting a little more stamina. The weapon art is insanely fun to pull off on a group of enemies. If you're an invader, you'll be flipping gank squads like burgers with this thing. The amount of souls you get just from clearing out all the enemies in the archive is kind of ridiculous, but I'm not complaining. Not like it really needs to be said, but our material here is stone, and you can never go wrong with a rock on a stick. It's great against enemies who are easily staggered like the Twin Princes. In fact, it's so strong that it knocked Lorien all the way across the room. If they too could be comically launched into the air for the win, then this fight would have been perfect. We can get a very interesting weapon from this fight. Looking at the description of Lothric's Holy Sword tells us that it is made of platinum. That's a material I've never seen in these games. We'll keep that sword in mind, but for now, we've got a few things to collect in the Dreg Heap, so we'll head there right away after offering all of the Lords of Cinder. First, we'll rush to the end of the initial pathway to pick up the Aquamarine Dagger at the top of the stairs. Then we'll run through all the creepy crawlies to reach the room holding Great Soul Dregs. Now we can get the hell out of here and upgrade our new dagger. The next boss is one where I'm fighting two separate enemies with their own health bars. So I'm gonna go back to the Road of Sacrifices for another material. We're farming the Storyteller's Staff so that we can use its weapon art. We'll get to that in just a moment, but first, we're going to test out the Aquamarine Dagger. The description mentions that this dagger is mostly made of an aquamarine crystal, and since the crystal gives the dagger its unique powers, I'll consider that the main material of this weapon. We're going to use this special weapon for a not-so-special NPC with a health bar. If the limitations of my stamina meter weren't an issue, I could probably stunlock this guy to death with it. Sometimes he'll try to block it, but this little dagger is actually pretty good at breaking his stance. It really shines when you hold L2 to use his special stance. While in this stance, a strong magical blade will appear that takes a sliver of FP for every swing. But it is absolutely worth it. It increases the range of the dagger without sacrificing speed, all the while doing extra magic damage. So as I continued to use the dagger to take out the Gravetender, I had to switch to the Storyteller's Staff for the wolf. This staff has a unique type of poison, released with its Poison Spores weapon art. It is stronger than the poison buildup of Poison Mist, so I think the spores can be classified as their own material here. Applying it is easy enough, but staying alive long enough for it to deplete all of the Great Wolf's health might be trickier than anticipated. On the bright side, I only have to cast it twice, but I made the rookie mistake of waving around a giant stick in front of a giant dog, so I'm afraid I'll have to cast discreetly if I don't want to get bitten again. Eventually, I decided to equip a shield to make myself feel better. It won't do much for the frostbite, but it does help with the charge attacks. In the end, we have enough souls for a single level, so I guess I can at least say I got something out of this fight. As I progressed through the first DLC, it came to my attention that I was running out of upgrade materials for special weapons. In order to remedy this situation, I'm gonna have to travel to Archdragon Peak before I worry about Sister Frieda. We'll have to sneak up to the Ancient Wyvern for a plunging attack as usual, and this time, the material we're gonna use is actually an element. The element of surprise. The only thing left to do now is get these Dragon Chasers ashes for infinite upgrade materials at Firelink Shrine. With that, we could upgrade the Onyx Blade to max level, but I think +4 will suffice for now. The titular material of this weapon, Onyx, was supplied to us indirectly by Frieda herself. Technically, it was a parting gift to her knight Wilhelm, but she threw him in the trash, so it's fair game. We'll be getting good use out of our second-hand gift. A heavier weapon like a greatsword is always a good choice against Frieda, but this one has that extra badassery that you can't get with just any greatsword. If you want to take this sword's coolness even further, you could use the weapon art to buff it with Black Flame. I definitely dropped the ball by not using it in this fight. Even if you don't have a need for fire damage, a cool buff is always worth it. But my sword's already so cool that I had to roll right in the flame just to stay embered. Without the buff, we still have physical and dark damage to work with, and on top of that, we can make use of the Hornet Ring and go fishing for backstabs. In Phase 2, I chose to focus on racking up poise damage on Father Ariundel. Even if I missed the riposte, I still had time for a full stamina bar's worth of attacks when one-handing. During the brief intermission before Phase 3, I don't want to be too close to where Frieda will be, but not so far away that I can't punish with a backstab. Those are still going to be our bread and butter here, but another thing a greatsword is good for is interrupting her during those seemingly infinite combos. If you stay focused after each hit, you'll notice that those strings she's doing are not safe. Don't let her get those extensions for free. Especially on those last few hits, her windup is really long and leaves enough time to jab her out of it in fighting game terms. Sometimes it might be better to respect the string if you don't feel confident about punishing it. You can see here she started it up again, and since I was pretty far away, I didn't get the punish in time, so I had to let it run its course until I had a chance to retreat. After a few more combo exchanges, I finally backed her into a corner and finished her off for good. This fight was very fun with this weapon. These challenge runs have really been broadening my horizons. And while this isn't gonna broaden my horizons, I'm still making her scythe to use in yet another run. For the next couple of bosses, I'm swapping to a hybrid intelligence and faith build. We can wear a couple of rings to wield Lothric's Holy Sword, which will upgrade to max level. That won't be the only thing though, we also have a Pyromancy Flame that needs to be maxed out. With both weapons ready, I'm going to buy all the Black Flame spells Carla will sell us, and yes, we were able to recover her from the rat's belly. Her contributions give us a total of 3 Black Flame Pyromancies to choose from, and like most spells, they are a material in and of themselves. And just to reiterate, Lothric's Holy Sword is made out of platinum according to the description. I guess this is going to be a mirror image of the fight from last time. We're using a straight sword for Phase 1 and spells for Phase 2. Lothric's Holy Sword is a fairly standard straight sword. It does have a unique weapon art, but we won't be using that today because I'd prefer to save all my FP for Phase 2. I'm a wimp, so once again I'm killing Demon in Pain first for the laser moveset. And while his friend here finishes downloading that, I might as well set the world record for the slowest hard swap ever performed. Black Serpent is not working, so I gave up on that one and focused on the other 2 spells in my wheel. Black Fire Orb is the one we use most of the time. Obviously, we need to have something that can hit him from a good distance away, where it's safer to attack. His increased dark resistance made this a bit of a slog, so I did end up leveling Faith to 30 for slightly better damage. So yeah, basically this was a Black Fire Orb spam fest with the occasional Black Flame Combustion thrown in during the laser. After this, we'll make the Demon Scar in preparation for another fight. But for now, we're sticking with our hybrid build. And this time, we're gonna use a little sorcery. Our damage type isn't gonna change though, so we'll need to get rid of this invader to claim the blindfold mask. This is gonna boost our dark damage a little more, but also make us weaker against dark. And this is the Ring City we're in, so we'll have to be careful. My staff of choice for our dark sorceries is the Izalith staff. It's made for hybrid builds like ours, so it should offer an extra boost to our dark damage. I can't afford to get it higher than +3 right now, but I'll give it a chance against Half-Light. The sorceries we have are Deep Soul and Great Soul Dregs, both of which are presumably made of the same material, which is Soul Dregs, or Humanity even. My Humanity packs quite a punch here. Our staff is only +3, and we're taking out the Painting Guardians in slightly more than 2 hits. Half-Light himself doesn't fare much better. Sure, his dark damage can be dangerous, but most of the time, a simple walk to the side while casting is enough to avoid whatever he throws out. He loves to roll, but the delay of the Soul Dregs always catches him off guard. With NPCs that are programmed to roll, spells that travel slowly are better, because the NPC is only guaranteed to roll the moment you cast it, not when the spell is about to hit them. So the moment he begins to attack, I've already made my move. We'll be back to wrap up the Ring City after we finished up with Archdragon Peak. I was saving this fight for when I had the Demon Scar, because I don't usually get to use a melee weapon for the fire material, but in this game, having a weapon that does pure fire damage will give us that opportunity. The plan is to use that on the Nameless King, and use the weapon art of Frida's Scythe on the King of the Storm. We've got a theme of duality going on here. Fire and ice, descendant of gods, descendant of dragons. For the ice material, we can only use the left scythe, since the right one is not actually made of frost. Getting a flying wyvern to land in the frost is not an easy task. There are those rare times where he'll dip his head down just long enough for the frost to get him, but that only happened once. And soon I ran out of FP and was stuck hitting him with the weak version. Clearly, this setup isn't gonna work, so I swapped around the order of the materials. This is a much better idea. Any melee weapon will do for the first phase. No matter if a dragon should be strong against fire, this chicken is getting roasted. Now we can get on with the Nameless King phase. I was very eager to try this weapon art against him. It really changes the tempo of this fight. This is a case where we actually can't afford to get greedy, since there's no way to defend ourselves in stance. There will be a bit of a learning process involved, and sometimes the best way to learn is to first see what doesn't work, so there will be a few tries where you don't land a single hit. The weapon art is very slow and easy to punish, but it doesn't matter how slow it is. There will be a time where you can hit him with it, even if it's a trade. And honestly, figuring out those openings and finding new ones as I went along renewed the challenge of this fight that is partially lost with experience. I discovered new openings that I don't normally have a chance to use, and found that the typical openings for melee wouldn't always work. It got much simpler as the fight went on, and I adjusted to the pace of the weapon art, but getting him to lunge to the exact place where I laid out the frost was the coolest thing I'd ever done in this fight, even if it was an accident. The frost doesn't act quite as fast as bleed does, but I'm fine with that because it's not like I'm in a rush to win. While it can be tempting to get greedy when he has 10 HP left, I know from experience that one bad roll is enough to ruin the fight. Luckily for me, he did another AoE, so I could beat him before my lack of Estus became a bigger problem. All of the base game besides the final boss is taken care of, so now we can jump back into the Ring City. If you're wondering why I'm fighting Midir naked, well, it's because I've brought in nothing short of the most advanced dragon slaying technology to date, a candle. Even the best technology benefits from a few extra bells and whistles, so we're using Flynn's Ring for some extra damage with a low equip load. Of course, that'll make some moves, like the big charge, a one-shot. But as long as we watch out for that, we'll be okay, because most of his other moves are combos that can be rolled out of. The Scholar's Candlestick, of course, is made out of wax, since we are hitting him with the candle part, but according to the description, it also is covered in ivory scales. So take your pick between ivory and wax. Say what you want about the candlestick, but this thing is capable of staggering the most fearsome dragon known to man. It doesn't matter how weak it is, if you hit the head, he's going down. And even a dragon will convulse with pain if you jam molten wax into their eye. While we won't do enough damage to finish the fight with the riposte, it's a big help nonetheless. And as long as we stay close, we shouldn't have to worry about any last-minute lasers. We need only trust in the guidance of our humble candle. After Midir, we also have our guiding moonlight in the old moonlight spell, which we're gonna make for the moonlight material since I accidentally ate Osiris. It's not quite time for that though. We're gonna use a melee weapon one last time against Slave Knight Gale. Our weapon of choice here is a whip, but not just any whip. A whip made entirely out of a witch's hair, which gives it its fire enchantment. Before I go in, I stop for a moment to follow this guy around. The poor guy always dies of exhaustion. Now it's time I quit stalling and ready myself for a long fight against Gale. He's resistant to every type of damage, so split damage weapons only make a minor difference in damage. As long as our punishes aren't too greedy, the damage will add up enough for us to see it, albeit very slowly. Once we're in phase 2, our strategy mostly stays the same. Hit him no more than twice, then back up as he starts to retaliate. If you stick around him too long, he'll smack you with his cape, and since the whip covers a good distance, we might as well stay in mid-range for basically the whole fight. We need to carefully watch what he's doing and anticipate his combo extensions. If he swings once, always assume that he'll swing again. Wait for the 3rd or 4th hit before punishing if you want to be safe. I know very well that patience is the name of the game against Gale, but a little greed always worms its way in towards the end of long fights. Thankfully, I had the Sun Princess ring to back me up just like the last Gale fight, and after 20 minutes of fighting, I beat Gale on the first attempt with a clump of hair. Ouch, that's really gotta sting. For the final boss, we're putting everything we have into intelligence. We may only have one spell, but it's all we're gonna need. Moonlight is definitely debatable as a material, but in the Souls universe, it's mentioned as its own special element enough times for me to count it. In our case, the old Moonlight spell is at least said to create light waves, and it may not be exactly the same as the real thing, but it's close enough. The light wave itself actually has very bad range, so I use this mostly as a melee spell for full damage. You get around half the damage if only the light wave connects, but if it connects along with the sword, we get almost 500 damage with our +6 staff. I definitely got a little ahead of myself on this fight as well. Spamming gets you nowhere in the Soul of Cinder fight, unless you are the Soul of Cinder. After a very messy fight that I probably deserved to lose, the Moonlight didn't give up on me, and continued to guide me to victory. And with that, the Dark Souls 3 Material Challenge is complete, marking the end of this trilogy. Thank you all for watching this video. I genuinely appreciate all the support you guys have given me up to this point. As always, I encourage you to try this challenge for yourself and take your own spin on it. Who knows, maybe there are some materials that I missed. I had so much fun taking this silly idea through all the Dark Souls games, and in the future, I'd love to try this with Elden Ring. So you can look forward to that, as well as even more challenge runs for the Souls series.